On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the main card middleweight fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman as part of UFC 294. A lot of changes on this card. If you haven't seen it already, I've already previewed the new main event. But let's get right into it. If you haven't seen the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then I'll give you my pick at the end. And we can talk about this in the comments. Let me know what your predictions are as well. Let's do a quick tail of the tape here. The former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman is 20-3, Chimaev 12-0, 36-29, 6 feet tall to 6'2", 76 inch reach to 75. So Chimaev going to be taller and younger, but Usman going to have a 1-inch reach advantage in this fight. Let's start first with the former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and have a look at everything that he is up to and all his stats and all that good stuff. So Usman, I mentioned it there, 20-3. He's got 9 knockouts, 1 submission, and 10 decisions. He's 36 years old. He is 6 feet tall with a 76-inch reach, so he'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, like I mentioned in the fight. He won season 21 of The Ultimate Fighter. He's a BJJ brown belt, and he trains splits time between Onk Sport, Elevation Fight Team, and Kill Cliff FC. Of course, we did see Gilbert Burns post a video recently, so it looks like he was most recently at Kill Cliff FC. He was a former UFC welterweight champion. Like I mentioned, he had 5 successful title defenses. He's got the 3rd most title wins in UFC welterweight division history. He's got the latest knockout in UFC title fight history against Colby Covington. He's the first Nigerian-born UFC champion, and he's got performance of the night 4 times against Hader Hassan, Rafa dos Anjos, Gilbert Burns, and Jorge Masvidal. If you look at it there, Usman did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros way back in November of 2012. Went and had his UFC debut in July of 2015 as part of winning The Ultimate Fighter. Where is that fight? That is right here against Hader Hassan. He's 14-2 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppages. Some notable wins include Leon Edwards, Sean Strickland, Damian Maia, Rafa dos Anjos, Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington 2 times, Gilbert Burns, and Jorge Masvidal. He's got 2 losses to Leon Edwards in the octagon. Has been pretty active overall. Not a lot of layoffs in his career. He's had 2 close fights that you can kind of look at. The first close fight was the second Colby Covington win. That was back at UFC 268. If you go back and look at the media scorecards for that one on MMADecisions.com, you'll see 18 media members scored the fight for Usman, 3 scoring it a draw. Did not see anyone score that one for Colby Covington. Actually, let me double check that. I'm pretty sure that's what I had in my notes, but just in case, I want to double check that one. If we go on here, you see Usman defeats Covington. Did anyone score for Colby? Yeah, no one scored it for Colby. So despite what Colby says, no media members anyways felt like he won. However, the Leon Edwards fight, he did win, and I've seen some people argue with me about this in the comments. Leon won the fight by decision, majority decision, I should say. If you go and look at the media scorecards for that one, 19 media members scored the fight for Leon, 11 media members scoring the fight a draw, and 2 giving it to Usman. So again, when I talked about that being a close fight, I do believe it was. I did have the fight for Edwards unanimously, but just pointing out that other people felt differently. If you look at Kamaru Usman's stats here, significant strikes landed per minute, 4.46. His striking accuracy is at 52%. His striking defense is at 54%. Check this out. His takedown average is 2.96, although we'll see who does the takedown here. His takedown defense is 97%, so we'll see if Chimaev is able to get him to the ground. His takedown accuracy is only at 45%. So that is pretty much everything you need to know about the former welterweight champion. And also got to point out, this is Usman's first fight up at 185, so these guys have both fought at welterweight, but if you remember, again, Chimaev's actually had fights at 185. Kamaru Usman has not, so that is one sort of key thing in this fight. Let's get over to Khamzat Chimaev, and if you watch my breakdown already of Khamzat Chimaev and Paulo Costa, I'm not going to go over everything, but a lot of it does apply here. So you can see Chimaev there, 12-0, 6 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 1 decision. He's 29 years old. He's 6'2" with a 75-inch reach, so he'll have bit of a age gap there. So Usman, you can see there's 36. He's 29, so a 7-year age gap there, if my math's correct there, and then just a 2-inch height advantage in this fight. Chimaev is a BJJ purple belt. He's a 3-time Swedish wrestling national league champion, and he was training at the All-Star Training Center, although he left there recently. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Gilbert Burns. He's got performance of the night 4 times against John Phillips, Reese McKee, Gerald Mershart, and Li Jingliang. He's got the record for fastest consecutive wins in modern UFC history at 10 days. And he's also got the record for quickest 3-fight win streak in modern UFC history at 66 days. This will be his 5th fight at middleweight. He's fought previously 4 times in the weight class. He's also had 2 catchweight fights and 5 welterweight fights. Chimaev made his amateur debut way back in September of 2017, made his pro debut a year later in May of 2018, made his UFC debut in July of 2020. So I think we forget he hasn't been in the UFC that long. Less than 3 years. He is 6-0 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppage victories. His notable wins include, while he doesn't have as far as UFC wins, his only notable win really is Gilbert Burns. You could put Kevin Holland in terms of people know who he is, but Holland's not a ranked fighter, at least not at welterweight. And then Li Jingliang was ranked at the time too, so we got to add him on there as well. I do want to mention one other win he had. He did defeat Ikram in his 4th pro fight. That was back at Brave CF. Ikram's a middleweight, so got to point that out too. And he hasn't had any losses, obviously being undefeated in the octagon. He's had a few layoffs. Going from Gerald Meerschaert to Li Jingliang, there's a 406-day layoff. Going from Kevin Holland to Kamaru Usman, there will also be a 406-day layoff. So a bit of a layoff coming in here. I don't think enough people are talking about that in this matchup. He's only had one close fight in his career. That was against Gilbert Burns. If you go look at the media scorecards for that one, you'll see that 17 media members scored the fight for Chimaev, just one scoring it for Burns. So majority did feel like he won, but it was closer, right? A lot of people going into that fight thought that Chimaev was just going to steamroll Gilbert Burns. That's not the case, but maybe this gives us an idea of how close this fight could be on UFC 294. Let's look at Chimaev's stats here. You can see significant strikes landed per minute, 7.30. That is a high number. Striking accuracy is at 59%. His striking defense is at 47%. His striking defense is at 41, so that's something to keep tabs of. His takedown average is 3.98, so it's more than Usman's. His takedown accuracy is at 57%, and his takedown defense is at 100%. Can Kamaru Usman be the first fighter to take him down? We'll see if there is any wrestling used in this fight. We do have some odds on this matchup. Got to mention those. Most having it almost 3-1 favorite against about a 3-1 favorite against Kamaru Usman in this fight, which I understand here, but I think there's still some questions about Chimaev fighting high level competition. It's easy to go out there and, take care of guys like, Gerald Meerschaert and Rhys McKee, but Kamaru Usman, I mean, he had a close fight with Leon in his last fight, right? Over on Tapology, if you look at if you look on Tapology, 69% of people picking Chimaev, just 31% picking Usman. So who am I going with in this fight? I'll leave the suspense. Not going to have much more suspense in this fight. I'm going to go with the odds here. I'm going to go with Khamzat Chimaev, but I don't think it's going to be, it could potentially be a fight where he goes in there and steamrolls Usman, but I'd likely not. A couple of reasons why I like Chimaev by decision as opposed to stoppage. Number one, it's a 3-round fight. Number two, Usman's only been finished once in the UFC against Leon Edwards, and that was a fight that he was winning the majority of that fight. I don't want to call it a fluke, but it was very unlikely that Leon Edwards was going to finish Kamaru Usman in the late in the fight, and that was in the 5th round, right? Usman's not known to get in any sort of real danger early on in the fight. This, in my opinion, is the second toughest opponent that Chimaev's fought in the UFC, the first one being Gilbert Burns. Usman already has a win over Burns, so you'd have to think that this is going to be a little bit more in Usman's favor as far as that goes. But there is the school of thought that maybe Usman's really on the decline here. He's moving up a weight class. Chimaev will be bigger and heavier in this fight. I know height and reach-wise, there's not a huge difference there, but I imagine Chimaev will be stronger here. Chimaev also had the full camp. Usman didn't, so it's another reason to like him here. But I don't know. I think Usman will hold up. I think the only way Usman gets finished in this fight is if he's really fallen off a cliff in terms of his durability here. Like I mentioned, he's 36. There's rumors about his knees not working properly. Maybe this is the fight. Like, Chimaev's a dangerous enough opponent with the amount of finishes he's had. Again, you look at the stats here. He finishes most of his fights. 50% of his wins by submission, 42% of his wins by knockout. So it could happen. This could be the fight. I'm not denying that. I just think if you look at Usman's overall resume, he's tough to finish. He's a really good opponent. And if he looks anything like he did in that Leon Edwards fight, I think this will be similar to the Burns fight. But I do see Chimaev edging it out for those reasons I mentioned. Full camp, bigger for the weight class. Again, no one really had Usman fighting at 185, so props to him for taking this fight. But I got to go with the guy that is at least fought in the weight class and the guy that has looked a lot more impressive, and that is Khamzat Chimaev in this matchup. So that is sort of where I'm going on this fight. And I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. I want to get, first off, your take on this fight being put together. Do you like this replacement fight? Some people feel like it's a better fight than Paulo Costa. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. Second thing I want to know, what's your prediction? I don't want to hear I'm picking, Usman. I want to hear why. Let's hear why, and I want to hear your predictions. We can discuss this in the comments in a very cool manner. That would be awesome. And if there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up here, I know this one's coming up real soon. We got a lot of fun fight announcements coming up. Let me know in the comments if there's any other fights you want me to preview. A bit of a quicker one here today, but not much to talk about here because this fight is, like I said, going to be happening next weekend. I'm James Lynch. Follow me Twitter, TikTok, Instagram @LynchOnSports. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.